You ever noticed how the strongest men never beg for company? They don't explain, they don't chase. They simply walk alone. And it terrifies the world. Because society thrives on noise, distraction, crowds. It tells you that if you're alone, you're weak. If you're quiet, you're lost. But what if I told you the opposite is true? That solitude isn't a weakness, it's a weapon. Listen carefully. This conversation may change the way you see yourself forever. When you walk alone, you break free from the chains of dependency. Most men need validation. They crave eyes watching them, ears listening to them, mouths praising them. But the man who learns to walk alone, he answers to no one. He becomes untouchable. That's why they fear him. Because when you don't need the crowd has no power over you. Think about it. Every insult, every doubt, every laugh behind your back, none of it matters when you're already beyond their reach. And this is the first truth of walking alone. You will be misunderstood. They will call you strange, obsessed, antisocial. They'll tell you you've changed. And you have. You were supposed to. The world cannot understand a man who chooses silence over noise, focus over distraction, solitude over comfort. They panic because they can't label you. And when they can't label you, they fear you. But let me tell you something. That fear is your advantage. Because when they step away, when they leave you alone, you gain something far more valuable than their approval. You gain time. Time to build, time to plan, time to grow. I've lived my life surrounded by betrayal, by brothers buried, by enemies pretending to be allies. And I learned quickly, walking alone was safer than walking with the wrong crowd. The battlefield doesn't forgive weakness, neither does life. And here's the paradox. The more you learn to walk alone, the stronger your presence becomes when you finally return. Because when you step into a room after building in silence, they won't even recognize you. Not because you've disappeared, but because you've transformed. Let me ask you, have you ever noticed how people mock your discipline at first? They laugh when you refuse the party. They question you when you wake up before dawn. They sneer when you turn down the easy path. But then, later, they envy you. They admire the very things they once ridiculed. That's the cycle. First, they judge. Then, they copy. And it all starts with walking alone. So if you feel isolated right now, if you feel like no one understands what you're building, let me tell you, good. That's exactly where you're meant to be. Because walking alone is not loneliness, it's alignment. It's you cutting away the noise, sharpening your focus, preparing for the battles only you can fight. And when those battles come, you'll be ready. Because you didn't waste your time explaining yourself to people who could never understand. You didn't beg for company that would only slow you down. You walked forward, alone. And in that silence, you became dangerous. This is just the beginning. In the next part, I'll reveal what walking alone really costs and why most men will never have the courage to pay the price. But those who do become legends. So tell me, are you ready to be one of them? If this message speaks to you, write in the comments, "I walk alone." And if you want more lessons like this video, share it with someone who needs the strength, and subscribe to this channel, because this is only the start of your transformation.
Walking alone sounds powerful, doesn't it? But let me warn you, power always comes with a cost. And this cost is one that most men cannot bear. Because solitude strips you bare. It removes the noise, noise, the applause, the distractions, and forces you to face yourself. No excuses, no escape, just you, your flaws, your failures, your demons. And that's why most people run back to the crowd. They would rather drown in noise than confront the silence of their own mind. But me, I learned to sit in that silence, to listen to it. And over time, I discovered that silence speaks louder than any voice in the room. When you walk alone, nights feel longer. The world feels colder. You begin to wonder if the sacrifice is worth it. Friends stop calling, family questions you, lovers grow distant. You start to feel invisible, forgotten. But here's the truth. Invisibility is an advantage, because the moment they stop watching, you start working. And while they're asleep, distracted, wasting years, you're sharpening your blade in the dark. So when the time comes, you don't just show up, you arrive like a storm. Understand this. Walking alone will cost you comfort, but comfort is what kills great men. The ones who never risk solitude stay soft. They become dependent on approval, validation, company. They never learn who they are without it. And a man who doesn't know himself is already defeated. Let me ask you, have you ever noticed how the strongest trees stand alone, exposed to wind, rain, storms, while weaker trees grow sheltered in the crowd? That's the same with men. The one who walks alone learns to endure. He bends but doesn't break. And in time, his roots run deeper than anyone else's. But here's the paradox that breaks most men. The longer you walk alone, the less you feel the need to return, because you've grown addicted to the clarity, the peace, the sharpness that only silence can give. And when the world calls you back, when people suddenly want your time, your energy, your presence, you look at them differently. Because now you know, most of them never cared about you. They only cared about what you could give them. I've seen this with my own eyes. Men who mocked me when I was silent came crawling back when I emerged with power. They wanted access to what they didn't help me build. And I never forgot. Because every step I took alone, every night I sat with my pain, every morning I rose before the world, that was mine, not theirs. And here's the second truth of walking alone. It makes you dangerous. Not because you seek violence, not because you seek control, but because you no longer need anyone. And the man who needs no one cannot be controlled. Think about it. How do you break a man who has already mastered being alone? How do you threaten him with rejection when solitude is his strength? How do you weaken him with silence when silence is his shield? You don't. You can't. He becomes untouchable. That's why walking alone is not for everyone. It will break the weak. It will expose the lazy. But for the few willing to endure it, it will forge them into something unrecognizable. And when you emerge after walking that path, you will see the world differently. You will see people differently. because you'll no longer seek their approval, you'll command their respect. This is why men fear solitude, not because it's lonely, but because it transforms. And transformation always comes with a cost. But tell me, are you willing to pay it? Are you willing to be misunderstood, doubted, mocked, even abandoned, just to build the man you were meant to become? Because in the final part, I will tell you what happens when you return after walking alone, and why those who once doubted you will never look at you the same again.
So what happens when you finally return? When the long nights, the silent mornings, the years of isolation sharpen you into something unrecognizable? That's when the world realizes it was wrong about you. Because walking alone doesn't just change how you see yourself, it changes how they see you. The same people who mocked you will now lower their voices when you enter a room. The same ones who doubted you will suddenly speak your name with respect. And the same crowd that laughed at your discipline will try to copy it. I've seen it all my life. At first they called me obsessed. They said I was too cold, too distant, too focused. But later, those same men came to me for advice, for guidance, for opportunities. And do you know what I did? I remembered. I remembered every word they said when I was silent, every insult they threw when I walked alone. And that memory became my shield. That's the third truth of walking alone. Your results speak louder than any defense you could ever give. You don't need to explain yourself. You don't need to prove yourself. You just arrive, calm, composed, and your presence alone unsettles them. Because here's the secret: silence builds mystery. Mystery builds fear, and fear builds respect. When you've walked the path alone, you stop shouting for attention. You don't post every move. You don't cry for validation. You let the results speak. And when they see those results, they understand, too late, that you were never weak. You were working. You were building. You were becoming. But let me warn you, when you reach this point, when your silence becomes power, people will come crawling back. Old friends, old enemies, even strangers. They will all want a piece of the man you became. They will want access to the empire you built in solitude. And this is where most men fail. Because they forget the code. They forget that walking alone was the reason they rose. They get distracted again, pulled back into the noise, chained again by the very people they outgrew. But not you. You must remember your silence, your solitude, your focus. That was your weapon. That's what separated you from the crowd. So don't throw it away for their comfort. Because here's the final lesson. You don't owe anyone an explanation. Not for your growth, not for your silence, not for your success. You don't owe them access to what they didn't help you build. You owe yourself greatness. And greatness is a lonely road. So if you're walking it now, keep walking. Even if no one claps, especially if no one claps. Because when you reach the top, when your results silence every critic, you'll understand it was worth it. Every step alone, every night in the dark, every sacrifice that nobody saw. It all leads here. The man who walks alone is never truly alone, because he walks with discipline, with purpose, with a fire that no crowd can give him. And that fire makes him unstoppable. So ask yourself, are you willing to take that path? Are you willing to be feared, respected, and unshakable, not because you shouted, but because you walked in silence until the world couldn't ignore you? If you are, write it in the comments. I choose to walk alone. And remember, this is just the beginning of your transformation. So like this video, share it with someone who needs the strength, and subscribe to this channel. Because here, you'll learn to walk the path most men are too afraid to take. And when you do, you'll never be the same again.